Alright guys, that was a lot of information. Hey guys, what's up? It's Kelly again and welcome back to my channel. Many of you are probably aware that we have a very important election coming up in the US, which is called our midterm election. We call it the midterm election, or just midterms for short, because they come in the middle of the president's term. Very creative, I know. In light of this event, I decided to do a video to discuss with all of you guys the differences between German elections and US elections. So put on your boots and let's go back to civics class together. I'm sorry, I won't make any more jokes. Germany holds parliamentary elections, or Bundestagswahl, every 4 years in order to determine the 598 seats of parliament, or the Bundestag. When Germans go to the polls, they cast two different votes. The first vote, or Erststimme, and the second vote, or Zweitstimme. I know, these are very creative names. Each vote decides on half of the seats within the Bundestag, or parliament. The first vote is for a candidate running in the voters' local constituency, and there are 299 constituencies in Germany, which makes up 299 seats within the Bundestag. For those of you who aren't great at math, like me, I will tell you that that is half of the Bundestag. And the second vote isn't for a candidate at all, but rather a political party. The vote will go toward deciding how many seats each political party will receive within the Bundestag, so long as they receive at least 5% of the total vote. The people who actually fill these seats are chosen by the political parties in each federal state of Germany. And by the way, there are over 40 different political parties in Germany, although there are only a handful that are actually represented within the Bundestag because of that 5% rule I just told you about. The Chancellor, or Bundeskanzler, is elected by the members of the Bundestag, so it's easy to realize that whatever political party has the most seats within the Bundestag will have the most votes within the Bundestag, and therefore will be able to elect whoever they want to be the Bundeskanzler. However, it's not so common for one political party to have 50% or more of the seats within the Bundestag. And so the political parties are having to work together to build a coalition through concessions in order to breach that 50% threshold and effectively elect a Bundeskanzler. And there are no term limits for the Bundeskanzler. In fact, there are no term limits for anyone sitting on the Bundestag. The President of Germany holds more of a ceremonial role, so nobody really cares about him. In the US, we have elections every 2 years. The entire House of Representatives is up for election every 2 years. 1/3 of the Senate is up for election every 2 years to make up 6-year terms, and the President is up for election every 4 years and is restricted to serving only 2 4-year terms. And unlike Germany's parliamentary system, in the US, the President, kind of a big deal. There are 100 senators, 2 per state, and 435 representatives, the number of which per state varies by population. DC and the 5 US territories are represented each and only by a delegate in the House who is very limited in power. And I can't really speak to how citizens of the 5 territories feel about that because I've never lived there, nor have I really talked to anyone from there about it. But I will say that the majority of residents in DC are quite upset with this. In fact, even the DC license plate has a slogan about it. The president is elected through the Electoral College, whereas Congress, which is the Senate and the House together, is directly elected by voters. And very unlike Germany's 40 political parties, the US has a 2-party political system, which is dominated by the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Alright, that's enough background. Let's move on to the stuff I really want to talk about, which is what is it really like for a US voter versus a German voter? Well, for starters, in the US, it seems like election season never ends because we have these elections every 2 years. So you're always seeing signs posted along the road or in people's yards. You're always getting phone calls from campaign offices wanting to talk to you about their candidate, and you're always seeing and hearing political ads on the radio or or on TV, and these ads are usually in a very aggressive attack format, just like launching offensives at their opponent or the opposition party. And this, of course, ramps up the closer you get to an election like we are right now, but it truly never ends. And these campaigns can cost up to millions of dollars. In Germany, it is so very different. Campaign season is legally restricted to last only 6 short weeks ahead of the Bundestagswahl, which probably sounds like a paradise to many Americans right now, like me, who are just a little tired of being inundated with campaigns. And while there are ads on TV and radio in Germany, they're not in this attack style like you see in the US, but they're rather much more cordial. Campaign signs and posters play a much more prominent role in German elections, and it seemed to me like these signs wallpapered entire cities in Germany ahead of last year's Bundestagswahl. And I noticed that these campaign signs were quite a bit different from what I'm used to seeing in the US. For example, there was always a picture of the candidate next to their name, whereas here you're usually just getting the candidate's name. And then there were some very, very different signs put up by the AfD political party with extremely provocative slogans and photos and thoughts, something that I never have seen in the US put up by a campaign office. Campaigns in Germany are also far less costly than US campaigns. Every German citizen who is at least 18 years old has the right to vote in the Bundestagswahl, and actually at age 16, Germans are able to start voting in provincial elections. There's no voter registration process because every German is automatically registered, and whenever they show up to the polls, they just have to show their German national ID. And the German national ID is compulsory for every German who is at least 16 years old, so it is guaranteed for every German to have one. There are very, very few restrictions for who is eligible to vote in Germany, to include those who have a legal guardian or the very rare case of a judge taking away someone's right to vote temporarily because they were convicted of committing a politically motivated crime. But other than that, everybody maintains their right to vote. In the US, you have to be at least 18 to be allowed to vote in any election, and you have to go through a voter registration process ahead of your specific state's designated registration deadline. And unlike Germany, it isn't required for a US citizen to have a form of identification, nor is there any sort of standardized form of identification. So in order to register to vote or to go to the polling station on election day and cast your vote, you have to have a form of ID that is accepted by your specific state, such as a US driver's license, a passport, a military ID, and some states will even accept things like a hunting license or a utility bill or something like this. The right to vote for the president is not extended to those residents of the 5 US territories, and 48 out of 50 states do not allow their felons who are currently serving time to vote. But beyond that, ex-felon and prisoner rights really vary state by state, but in 2016, there were 6.1 million people who were ineligible to vote because of felon convictions. And just to circle back to Germany, felons maintain their right to vote whether they're out of jail or currently serving time. There's also plenty of literature and news stories out there talking about US voter suppression that goes beyond what I just mentioned. In Germany, you receive a letter in the mail telling you where your polling station is based on your residential address. And election day is usually held on a Sunday. For anyone familiar with Germany, then you know that Sundays are very, very quiet. Usually all the stores are closed. Obviously, it's not a work day. And so it is really easy for Germans to be able to go to the polling stations and vote. In fact, a lot of Germans will make it sort of a family activity where the whole family will go to the polling station. Everyone who's eligible to vote will cast their vote, and then they'll go out to eat together as a family for this special occasion. And the elections must be held between 46 and 48 months after the first Bundestag sitting. And so the date of the election can really vary even by the month. In the US, US, your polling station is also determined by your residential address, but they are not standardized. It can be a fire hall or a parish center or a recreation center or a school and so on. And election day in the US is always held on a Tuesday, which is a work day, which obviously presents some issues. Some employers will allow their employees time off to go to the polling stations and vote, but these accommodations are in no way guaranteed. And so in order to combat this, there are 37 states who allow early voting so that people can go to the polls far in advance of the actual election day and vote in accordance with a time that's more appropriate for their schedule. And I know I didn't mention it earlier, but Germany does not have this early voting thing. Both Germany and the US have absentee ballots or letter ballots so that citizens who are unable to get to their polling station are still able to cast their vote as long as it's for an approved reason. And the voting process in Germany is done entirely by paper and is standardized across the country, whereas in the US there is no sort of standard and each state can choose its own method, and some states even have multiple methods that they employ district by district. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I did not see nor am I aware of any Germans receiving a "I voted" sticker at their polling station after voting. In the US, this is like a really popular thing, and on election day you will see people wearing their "I voted" sticker around, posting it on Facebook or Instagram, and there are even a lot of bars and restaurants here in DC who are offering specials and discounts for people who are wearing their "I voted" sticker on election day. It is a huge deal. And this is all sort of a marketing campaign to try to encourage people to go out and vote because we have a history of really low voter turnout. All right, guys, that was so much information, I know, but I hope you found it as interesting as I did. I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say in the comment section, especially if you think that there's one system that works way better than the other system. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up if you like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. If you click the bell, it gives you notifications for every time that I post a new video, so make sure you hit that. And thank you so much to my patrons. You guys are awesome for the support that you've given me, and I will catch you next time. Bye! I know I keep saying this, but make sure you follow me on Instagram. I post stories and photos on there every day for you to check out. My handle is Kelly Does Her Thing. Creative, again, I know.